This is the Get Into Their Heart Devlog 1. I'm the lead developer, Alchemist, and I will be going through the publicly available build and showing you guys that. This will function as a little bit of a tutorial to Renpy, and so hopefully if you're not interested in the game, you can find some use out of this. If you hear some things in the background, it's because I'm recording this in my living room. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, if you look, this is the actual folder that the entire game is in. So if you go to game and then you open up script.rpy, that will be exactly what I am showing you right now. The editor that I'm using right now is Visual Studio Code, but you can use Visual Studio or whatever else you want and feel comfortable with to look at this. Theoretically, even Windows default notepad, if you so choose. This will contain spoilers, of course, as you can see down here. But to start off, let's look at what you need to start off a build of, or rather a game for Renpy. Renpy is, of course, a visual novel engine. And so it has this script file that, of course, we will be going through, contains the entirety of the game, that being the logic that goes into it, what text is shown, and every command that will be in the main game portion of it. And what that takes the form of is these little lines. So if you put in quotation marks a line of text, this one is narration without any characters or any sprites being displayed. That will just show a line of text in the screen. And of course, that all needs to be contained in a label start because it's a Python-based thing, so you need to know what things that are being initialized or setting the terminology that you will be using, and then the actual code part of the game. You can have characters say things. So you can see here that MC, this is the main character, this is you, and whatever name you choose, this is the main character that is saying this, and so they are declared up at the top with MC. If we scroll up to the top, we can see I've neatly labeled where all of the characters are. And so let's go through this, at least for the main character. Define MC, this is just showing the program what MC is. So here's what that actually means. So you need to have this line here that shows that it's an object of a character type. I don't actually know if that's the case, but you're just enclosing the data in the format of a character. And so here's the name. As you can see here, that this is actually a variable, so it's a dynamic name. And so if we ever set something player name, that will be what the name is. And of course, the color for their text. So when you are in the game and you can see a character name, you can set the text for that. But what's a visual novel without some visuals? So here are a bunch of different sprites. Let's go for, since the main character doesn't have any of their own sprites, this is in a first-person perspective, you can see that here's where I declare all of them. So this is the name separated into different tags. As you can see, there's the character dog. His name is Bernard, but originally we didn't have a name, so we just made all of them dynamic in case something came up that we wouldn't need to change all instances of the previous name to the current name. So you can see that character dog has a default sprite. And what that means is that when we ping dog default, specifically the show command, so here's the thing to show a sprite. And this shows the sprite dog_default in the middle of the screen. And so this is the file name for it, and that's just in images, and somewhere in here there will be a dog_default.png. Here it is, right here. This will be the PNG that is being shown to the player. And of course the zoom, so we can scale it. And so that's that. And so you can show images by defining them, and you can show characters in a much similar way. But what if you want to add music to it? That's with the play music command. I haven't actually defined any specific music things, so I just ping the music name every time I do the play music command. So that's it. So you just put in the file name for this, or if you had a tag, if you defined it up above the label start, then you'd be able to use that name for that. And then of course, this is the main bulk of it. but you can also add some extras onto this. So what this does is it will fade out the previous track and then fade in the previous track. And then these variables right here are for how long it takes to fade in and fade out. So I believe these are 1 second each. So yes, there's that as well. Let's go down. Oh, yes. This is getting into spoilers. You've been seeing it, but I will now explain this. So, whereas most of the characters, at least in this build, only have one or a few sprites that are being shown, I believe this build only uses the default sprites. We have this character Monster, which actually has an animated sprite. And so what we do for that is, instead of defining just a singular image, you can define it as a series of images. So if you look at this is something of type transform, but you can, instead of declaring just one, you can declare multiple. So this is kind of like a little bit of a block of code, as you can see with this, it's stretching out. But what this basically says is display a singular image, pause for a certain amount of time, then display the next image, then do that. So what that does is essentially just, it's a little bit brute force of a way to do an animated sprite, but it's worked, or at least I hope it does. So yes, there is that. In addition to characters and character sprites, you can also have backgrounds. So these don't have, I probably should add a zoom to these so that they can show up and scale properly. Sometimes it works in this build, but in the newest build, there has been a bit of zoom issues. The backgrounds are a little bit zoomed in, but they follow a similar thing. You still declare an image, so it's just putting an image into memory, and it's just we're using that in a different way. If you go, you can see show dog default. That will show. Show is the keyword here. Show puts a sprite on screen, where scene puts it as the background. So what this is, we're still using like split up words. BG Cafe. It's looking for a variable with an image in it called BG Cafe. And then it'll display that with the dissolve transition. And then of course, here's BG Cafe, and then we can go and find that in the files. That's the main menu theme, but we'll hopefully in version 1.0 be changing it to the apartment, or BG Apps Day. So there's that. But you can just, instead of separating them out, you can just do BG Cafe, all one word. But what separating it out does is gives it a tag. So if you see here, soft default. Let's say we had, let's copy this, soft blush, and then that's getting the soft blush PNG. So what that does is it's seeing that these two have the same first thing. So if I were to say, go to the scene with the soft character, that being Fern, and we were to show soft blush here, you can see that they both have the same tag, because of course they're the same character. But normally, if you think about what a game engine and what code does in general is, it's very dumb. If you don't tell it to remove something, it won't remove it. So normally, if this was soft blush and soft default, what it would do is it would see show this image, then also on top of that image, show this image. But what giving them tags does is Renpy can see that they both have the same first thing, and then it can know that this is just another form of this. So if you do a soft default and then a soft blush, then that means it'll let Renpy know to remove the previous one and to put in the next one. I believe that is the bulk of what is going on in the thing, but there is a little bit more. So you will notice that the player character has a custom name. When you're playing the game, you can put in your name. Here are the names. I talked about how these names are dynamic. So it's looking for the player name variable. The default one is of course protagonist, but we can set that. So we can use a little bit of Python. This letter here is telling Renpy to use Python instead of Renpy script. So what this line says is just, for this part of the game, it'll display a text input, and it'll say, what is your name? And then it'll wait for you to put a little bit of input and then press enter, or some other way to advance it. And then if you put something there, it'll set it to that, which is what this line is. But if you put nothing in there, it'll put in the quote-unquote default name, which is just Archie. And so you can use the $ symbol to put in a little bit of Python, in case you know that. So yes, and then later down, we have two more major things to go over. So we have some displayables. Displayables, if you go through the Renpy tutorial game, if you download Renpy, it should come with a tutorial game that just says tutorial on it, in addition to like an example game called The Question that you can look through and pour through. But it has a really fantastic tutorial game that really puts everything into little itty bits, but of course larger bits than the Renpy documentation, which is just an online website that you can go to look at all of the different commands and see what they do and have some examples. But anyways, what that has is displayables. We don't use very many because this is a very simple game, but for this one, we have a poem. So normally you can just put in text at the bottom of the screen where Renpy normally has text. But what we can do is we can put in displayables, which are things of type transform, which is basically just like a type for showing things on screen and stuff like that. We can do a transform of type text. So this is the poem. Halfway through the game around, I believe in your second or third encounter with Fern, the character Soft, they will give you a poem, and that will show up in the middle of the screen. Here's that. So that's shown with a text object that it's in poem form, so it uses a bunch of \n's to put it on a new line, so it's not just all one line, and then it sets the size. That's the text object. And then for the rest of the transform object, what these two things do is tell it to put it in the center. So X align is how aligned it is with the center of the screen, 0 being the left and 1 being the right. So we just want it to display in the center of the screen, so we do X align and Y align, which is the same, but for vertical stuff, 0.5 for both. And then I believe we have one more thing. For most of the game, it's fairly linear, but if you've seen any other visual novels like Doki Doki Literature Club or pretty much any other visual novel out there, they have choices and diverging things. And this game has a little bit of that, but it's mostly linear. So what you can do is give the player choices and stuff. So what that takes the form of is menus, at least in this game. What a menu is essentially just similar to just a line of text. It's kind of like a line of text. Here's the line of text that is displayed with the menu, but of course there's buttons on a menu. Below the text that should be shown, we have the little buttons. For this one, what this menu is the monster character asking you, which one did you like the most? So you have the names of each of the different characters and as buttons. So this is what's being displayed on the button, and then here's what happens when you click the button. So this would have Bernard on it. So if you respond, which one did you like the most with Bernard, then the monster character would say, in that case, and then here's a little line of code that would just say to jump down to a specific section. Normally, Renpy is linear in the top to bottom sense, so it runs through everything in the script from top to bottom. But what you can do is, if you don't want to immediately after responding with, I like the dog character most, sing the soft characters scene, then you can use jumps to skip over periods of code and stuff like that. So the jump command just says to jump to a specific thing. And then here's choice B, which is this block of code, which will then be the thing that Renpy will display. So then it hides the monster character, and then it shows the dog character. And then there's a little bit of a scene with Bernard, the dog character, and then that's of course the end of the game. And so you jump to the very bottom, and there is the end. So there's that. But if you'll notice, there was something very interesting going on with this menu. If you choose I can't choose, then it pulls up another menu. What that just means is, like, this is essentially just a part of the script. So if you click on this, all of this is just part of the script. So you could do another menu. Or more likely, you don't want to clutter it up that much, you send it to a block of code that then has a menu. But this is very simple, so I just opted to put in a second menu. So if you choose, I can't choose, and then the monster character says, and why is that? And if you say, I love them all, then you jump to that, and then if you hate them all, then you jump to that. So there is that. So I'll repeat it again. If you want to, you can just go to the itch.io page, get this version of the game, and then you'll be able to go and see all of what I have shown you by just going to script.rpy. I hope this has been helpful and at least slightly entertaining. I'll see you next time.